We have agenda minutes, like comments. Need to go over any minutes. I didn't get a chance to see them, darn it. Did you get a chance to read them?
Do that again. You got to use your mic.
All right. Does the judge have anything to add?
They sent them today. I think it was today.
Okay, so why don't we just go in? Basically, we're here tonight to talk about kind of a recap of the celebration and everybody's feedback, and take some good notes so that people 100 years from now can kind of learn from our mistakes, our successes. So, what do you guys think? You think it turned out okay?
I want to see the financials. Who has those?
Or you want to hear the financials before you?
Well, I'm just curious. So is Brandon or Treadway going to have that, or does Isaac have it? Okay. I'm just curious to see if we broke even or.
Well, it'd be good to know how we ended up, though. Oh, Robbie.
Can we have that yet then?
Who?
We have to-
Okay, so Isaac, you're going to go through this.
Yep. So I'm just gonna. I'm not gonna review any line items unless somebody particularly wants to see something like how much came in sponsorships or anything like that. But essentially, we knew we were going to be over budget, but we were able to reduce the amount of overage by about $2,200. Various ways. So we spent about $90,000 on the event. The vast majority of that came out of sponsorship dollars, probably 90% or more. And we only brought in $83,500. So there was a gap of $7,300, $7,400 that the city will go ahead and cover there. So for an event the size that we did, that's pretty decent on the budgeting in terms of what we spent, and then the amount of sponsorships that came in was pretty astronomical. So pretty much all I've got. So t-shirts did well. We sold out of all the Treadway events designed shirts. So all the special ones that said Scappoose and had those went almost within the first day, I believe. They were very popular. The books did well. The beer garden entries went well, although that came in about 2,000 less than we had budgeted. I budgeted in it for about 1,000 entries, and we didn't hit that. We only had
We didn't get 1,000 entries?
the beer garden. No,
Oh,
we had about 3/5 that, so that's 600. So needless to say, that was a bit of a disappointment for the Elks. They were really hoping for a bit more. Between the heat and we did cut the marketing budget off, so we didn't have that advertising going out as much. Both of those things impacted it. Also, having 2 parks and 2 locations impacted it. Some people came just to Heritage and thought, oh, this is it, or they didn't know. And so one of the things that Treadway had recommended was that the next time we do this, we consider only using one venue. That way we kind of condense everybody down. So there's more saturation in terms of people visiting vendors and food vendors and history tents and attending music.
I agree.
Does anybody have any questions about any of the budget stuff particularly?
Cool.
so the one question I have is the connection or the calculation of the number of entries into the beer garden, was that based on receipts?
Yeah, so it was based on a $5 entry is what we were charging.
So I know at least when I was covering part, there was quite a few that we didn't capture. Well, if that was endemic to the system, we may have missed quite a bit of revenue there.
Yeah, and there, we didn't like have a counter and count how many people came in versus receipts, and so that wasn't something we implemented, but something in the future we could definitely do is count how many people are actually entering who have already paid, and then also check and make sure that there's people we are.
I would estimate about another 200 came in that didn't pay prior to, when we first started charging, maybe 200 or 300.
It seemed like we had I was estimating about 1,000 on Saturday night. That was high.
Based on the $5 entry fee.
Yeah, so the math, we brought in however much it was, $2,000, 2,300 or something. We just divide by 5 for the entry fee. So
Okay. Pete,
We have a report on how much came in for the Run for Neil.
Yeah, that's in there. The last time I checked, there were, I don't have it in here because the budget for the run was going to be offset by the entries, but I believe it was around 5,600, but that was a week prior to the event. And people signed up right before it, and there were donations that came in after the event to that fund. So I don't have a current number, but I believe at the very minimum, it'll be about 2,500 positive after expenses to go to the fund.
that's great. We had Mr.
We brought in about 7,500 total dollars. There's credit card fees, and then there's fees to the runsignup.com as well as to the timing company. But still, after all that, plus Facebook ads, et cetera, yeah, it's a nice profit back to the group. So I think it's going to be a little higher than that for sure. We had 350 some entries, which was pretty amazing. So overall, the family was very happy with not just the monetary, but also just the goodwill from the community.
I think the fact that you're able to get that many people and with competition on an established event was really a credit to your efforts. Nice job on that, Paul.
Thanks. It was really the volunteers that just came through, and especially I want to thank Robbie for helping me out with that. I couldn't have done it without you.
Like Robbie was everywhere.
He was.
It was.
You never left.
So what do you, Alex, any thoughts on this? Are you glad it's over? Or?
I mean, big part. Sure. I wonder why.
One note on the budget is I attended another event Treadway put on the weekend after this. It was similar to ours where they were doing a community event there yearly, and they were actually able to profit by about 40 grand, 45,000. So I think that there's definitely some room if we decide to do this in the future to change the way the planning works, change the way that we spend money, what kinds of things that we do to where this could actually be a profit event so that can go back to the community or go back into the, an event the year after.
Yeah, I think condensing the two parks, because we had to do double the expenses, right? Double the fencing, double everything. So that obviously expanded our budget. So having it at one location will help.
Anybody want to? Any other comments about just doing it in one park? Does that make something we should?
Logistically, Brandon here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Hey there. So logistically, yes, one park, that's on some of our notes too. That's perfect as well for vendor visibility too. We had vendors spread out through both parks, which means there was less visibility because some people might have only went to Heritage Park, they may not have went to Veterans Park, and vice versa. So being able to do it all at one park, having everything at one spot is much easier to manage, takes less volunteers, less man hours to set up. And I think, Veterans Park by itself has more than enough space, aside from the Watts House, with being a big aspect of Heritage, of course, for everything that we did. So yes, definitely second the idea to do one park.
So Jeff, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I think keeping it at one park, but there's stuff that has to be done to veterans to make that ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely the electricity needs to be finished. So we don't have to rent a bunch of equipment next.
Yeah, that was a good eighth of the budget right there, maybe more.
So Brandon, this is Joel. So Isaac made the note that you ran a like kind of event a week after, and you netted a profit of 40 grand. Can you explain a little bit or dig into a little bit what principal differences?
So one of the big things I think was the fact that there's a lot of promised in-kind donations that the committee and us ourselves rounded up that ended up in some cases backfiring, which then costed us more money, things like that. And then in addition to that, we ended up paying a lot on equipment, which we didn't plan for. Had we known, we would have, used our other resources to get, cheaper pricing, things of that nature. And then also really adding in some of the vendor fees. There's a lot of vendor fees for this other event that were it was actually a little bit more expensive in some cases. And then in addition to that, really just getting for Treadway events for myself and for Charles, coming into this halfway through, it was hard because there was already lots of commitments versus us looking at, the numbers and saying, hey, who else could we use for this vendor instead of this other vendor? Treadway events has a lot of relationships currently too, with cheaper vendors, and we tend to work with a variety of them based on what event it is. So really getting in there and kind of seeing where else we can save and kind of penny pinching is what we did for Squirrel Fest. In Longview, that's really what it came down to. We essentially used almost all of our own vendors, and aside from restrooms, I don't think we had any in-kind guarantees. Aside from, we had plenty of sponsorship, of course, but we didn't request signage to be donated. We did pay for that all out of pocket, all of that kind of stuff. So really just kind of doing it from the start, seeing who could we utilize that we already have relationships with, because we do use them all for for every event, so we get some pretty good pricing on that note.
All right, thank you. That's helpful insights going forward.
Sure.
So why don't we just go around the room? Pete, what are your thoughts about what worked and we should do differently? And we'll just kind of give each person a couple of minutes to kind of share their thoughts.
Well, first of all, I thought it went well. I mean, the whole event went well. We had a lot of adversity and COVID and extreme heat, but just looking at the total event, I think that we can be real proud of what we put on, so to speak. I think it went well. I don't have a lot of specific things to suggest. In my particular area, mine was kind of unique unto itself, and I've already talked to Brandon about some of the things that I think maybe could be a little bit different. So I don't have any particular. I might think of something as we go around the room, but at this point, I think it went as well as we could be expected to. So.
Thank you. Robbie?
Yeah, I think for what we were trying to accomplish, which was celebrate the community and the history of Scappoose, I think we hit every target. It'd be really difficult to use this event as a benchmark going forward, just because this event had so many different factors. Like, if we have an event in the future, maybe we don't have the parade, maybe we don't have the run or the history pavilion or the music or the amount of music or movies in the park. There was just so much we tried to hit on, which was great for a centennial. It only happens once every 100 years. But moving forward, if we were to hold an annual event, I think it would need to be more focused, which is fine. But so you just pick kind of a theme or a focus and pick one park possibly. But for what we were trying to accomplish, which was honor the people in the community, honor the history, and then the future, I think we did a great job given the circumstances, COVID and the heat and vendor shortages. And I think it was all around just a good event for what we were trying to accomplish.
Anything you want to add?
So Justin from the police department, I agree. The one location would help, just in the sense of splitting. Our resources are pretty limited just on manpower. But also just due to staffing, it would have been better to have on-site security paid for by the program. We had guys, the officers that worked, 7 to 12 days in a row because of still fulfilling obligations to the city and then coming in and working overtime to cover the needs. So it was because of that security that we had apparently agreed to for that 24/7 coverage those couple of nights that everybody was expecting, understandably. But we did have a lot of folks that said all the venues they've been to, they typically had some paid security for that type of just venue security. So that would have been helpful for the police department standpoint. But I know public safety wise, it went very well. And from the behind the scenes, we made everything work where I think everything went very well from that standpoint. So, yeah.
Ellen, you want to quick?
I know I've been in the community a lot and got a lot of positive feedback about the event. I think people were impressed with the scope of the activities and displays, the parade, the music, lots and lots of positive feedback. If we were to focus on one park, I mean, I think Veterans Park is increasing in size as we incorporate Grabhorn Park into that. So that might be a very reasonable option to have it just at Veterans as we expand into the Grabhorn Park.
Thank you. Damn it.
I'm in agreement with also the one park idea. I think that 2 parks is just, I realized we had many activities and we probably needed that space for all of that. But going forward, definitely 1 park. I only heard a couple of negative feedbacks, and what it was about was the howitzer. Not having warning, and even though people said, well, they warned in the parade they were going to shoot that off, and I'm like, well, if you weren't at the parade, you didn't know that thing was going to make that sound in your neighborhood and with animals and pets and that complaint. I heard that a couple of times, but everything else, especially historical tent, that was a huge hit. Good job, Pete and Joel. That was amazing. People constantly commented about that, how great that was. So I just think going forward, 1 park, making it simpler, bigger signs on the highway. I ran into a lot of people who said, I didn't even know it was going on. I said, well, it was in the paper. I don't read the paper. I'm not on social media. I didn't see any signs on the highway. So I think definitely better signage. And even if we can get that county road sign, that electronic sign like we had before for powwow, especially with Veterans Park being off the main road, that's the one drawback about that, I think. If you're driving the highway, you can see it at Heritage, but you can't see it at Veterans. So better signage for that. And I just think it went really well. I finally caught up with my sleep. That was a long 3 days, and I'm pretty amazed.
Long and hot.
Long and hot. 15-hour days on our feet for 3 days. That was long days, and everybody did an amazing job, I thought.
For those who didn't go into the Watts house, they had a great turnout. It's just a flow of people through there all day long, and they had things for them to do and look at, and it was the best I've seen the Watts house look in a long time, so maybe ever that I've seen. But anyway, I thought was went on in the Watts house. It's really good. A lot of people going in and out of there, and people going in to get.
And we planned to
something to drink that was cold.
We plan to maybe do an open house with all the historical posters that you brought over there. So that because a lot of people didn't get to go into that and they still want to see it. So we'll do something maybe in October or November for that.
And that is something I'd like to talk about with this group before we're done. Is what we do with those posters. It'd be nice that we have some. They shouldn't just go away. I think there's too much value in them that. Maybe working with the schools, working with, I've talked to Alex about maybe displaying some of them in here, and you have the Watts house and you have open house, but you don't have a lot of wall space there either.
We don't have a lot of wall space, but what we did talk about is maybe not monthly, maybe like 3 or 4 times a year, bringing in, like focus on West Coast Shoe Company and have them come and do a talk, and then we can use that poster and just try to.
It'd be kind of fun if you
Open it up more.
rotated them through here, maybe every 6 months. Keep all of them and rotate them through.
You could dress it up a bit.
Yeah. I don't know. Some of those things in the back are pretty Chief,
Well, first, I gotta say, the event
Mike, you got any? Isaac, you want to say anything?
Just a quick question for Treadway. Well, two things. One quick question. Did we get the attendance numbers? Do you have an estimate for that?
Estimated was at right about 1,300 people. And the way that was taken was basically doing essentially a count every, like, I think it was 2 hours or so that we had Bubba and Samantha working on. So essentially they would just count, how many people they saw at that point. And I think there's a multiplication thing to determine the entire amount per day. But I think based on the attendance and the sales for the concert, I think that's right about correct for the 2 days.
In both parks?
Yeah, correct.
And that's per day or event wide?
Event wide, total event.
And then I just want to say that I think in the future we should make sure we don't compromise on marketing and advertising. I think from what I saw, most people who were at the event lived in the community, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that would have came out, maybe different heat circumstances, but making sure we really get that word out early and often. It's something I've seen in other events that they really hit that hard, and I think it pays off in attendance numbers, and then of course for the vendors and
I think I'm going to echo what Pete noted and the rest of you that, we really can be proud of this event, the centennial event. And it speaks highly of both staff and our community, and particularly the volunteers. So I think we can all be very proud. And to Robbie's point about we can't use this as a benchmark, given the extraneous conditions that we experienced, the COVID and the ridiculous weather. So, and so this is not a benchmark, and that kind of what threads back to what Alex noted about the budgeting. It's you really can't use it as a benchmark. But I'd like to come back and something that Brandon had noted, the efficiencies of doing front loading the coordination. That's huge. And so my advice or suggestion is that and again, I congratulate Brandon and Charles and company. They did a marvelous job from my perspective. So I would like to see us, if we're going to go ahead and do this again next year, something like this at Veterans or wherever we choose to do it, I would like to see us contract with Treadway again, but get it going early. And for exactly the reasons that he noted, is that there are efficiencies and they're professional at this, and so we can leverage their skills and getting started earlier and lining stuff out. It makes our life a lot easier. So I highly encourage the city to have a conversation with Treadway sooner than later. Anyway, I think we did a great job.
I think it's just kind of following what Joel said. I think initially, from what I remember, are the first meetings that I attended. A lot of the pre-planning about having the two parks were already set, so I kind of felt like I was coming in the middle. So I could just imagine Treadway, right, that came way after. So, but I remember the first conversations. The event wasn't about making money, right? It was about just celebrating. And so it kind of bit us at the end, right? It affected us because so much money we had to spend, yet we weren't charging the vendors very much for a 2-day event. So we kind of, that was on our bad, but we didn't intend it to be as big, I imagine. And we didn't intend to make money, but we still had to make money, right? So my feedback, well, just remember, obviously in the beginning, it's a little chaotic, right? There's a lot of things that went wrong, trying to fix, but you know what? What counts is that on the front end, people didn't notice much, so that was the good thing. So people think, oh, you guys seems like it's going smooth. I'm like, okay, great, because on the back end things are a little crazy. I thought that the parade was amazing, by the way. Great job, guys. People loved it. I was more of a spectator at that event, and so we had fun, and I got to drive. Oh my gosh, I forgot, Mr. Watt, or my husband did, and so that was actually a great experience to get to meet him and know him and just hear his stories. So that was I really enjoyed the parade. So, before I forget, I put a bunch of photos that were taken and video in the drive. And it was also photos from the council. Oh my gosh, get his name right now. It just escaped me. City councilor. He's new.
Brandon?
Oh, maybe Ty.
Yes,
I know.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Tyler took a bunch of pictures. He sent him over. And so they're in the drive. And so thank Tyler for that. So as far as the advertising and everything, I mean, we bought a big sign in the highway. We put out banners, social media, in the mail, in your bill. People didn't know about it. It must be under a rock. I don't know. So, I mean, we did what we did as far as the event as we could. So I I think a lot of the non-turnout was either because of COVID, we're still in a pandemic, and also because of the heat. That's what I got back. I also wanted to ask, how were we with our payment commitments with the school as far as the teams? Have we paid that out, and did we commit to what we said? And also my questions are, those benches, since we are under budget, are we not going to get money for the benches? And I think there's some bench that was donated, right? Where is that going to go? Just questions.
Sure. So in terms of the payments and payouts for our commitments, those have all been processed or in process.
Mhm.
As far as I know, the only one I'm not sure about is the run that's being handled by the finance administrator and the group who was organizing the run. As for the benches that we had wanted, there's no extra money allocated. At this point, we're over budget by $7,400, $7,200, something like that. That's not something I can answer. As for the donated bench, that is on the radar of Public Works to find a good site for that. You also asked for something with shade so that people can actually sit on it because it's made of metal.
Yeah, and that thing as well, right? The piece.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So that'll probably live in here for now.
Get you that.
Well, first of all, I want to echo just a great group. It's been fun working with everybody. And everybody really stepped up during the event. So one of the negatives was that we were the boots on the ground, which was needed. But I think it really exhausted the whole group. I think looking forward is the committee members, while putting hours and hours into it, can't be the boots on the ground the days of the events. It was just too much for everybody. I think we pushed to the limit a lot of people, and everybody came through though. But as far as what Robbie said, we looked at this with an eye of really giving back to the community. The squirrel event or whatever that's called, I'm sure they didn't look at their squirrel logo for 7 meetings in a row like we did on our logos. And we made decisions based on that. We originally had planned to have volunteer shirts that were $4, which is what most people give to volunteers. But because it said Scappoose 100 on it, we wanted it to be a great shirt, and we spent 3 times more. And so a lot of the budgeting issues were around, as Jeanette said, was around just making a great event. It wasn't about making sure we were going to make money. So I echo Robbie's thoughts that a lot of the decisions that we made, we really can't say that's going to happen again, except for in 100 years. As far as the events that I worked on, specifically, the run went fantastic, and I really thank the volunteers for that. It really helped immensely. And the doggy run, if you didn't see that, that was also a huge success. And I think that goes back to having more participant events. I thought that was a really good thing, that the participants were our marketers. The people that were in the run were so excited about the run, told people about the run, brought people to the run, their family, etc. And looking forward, the more participant events I think we have would be great if we're going to do something in the future. As far as other things, of course, the one park would make things a lot easier. And I also just consolidated the amount of people, reducing the scope. We don't need to, we gave a lot of things away because we wanted to be a great event. We wouldn't need to do that going forward. The one thing that I thought was a miss, which I kind of expected slightly, was the alcohol area. It was a gated off area. Families couldn't go in it during the day. They wanted to do some activities in there, but the people were under 21. And that was a real miss basically for the entire event, I think. It kind of came this thing that nobody was in for almost the whole day. And then later on, you know, when the band started later, it became better. I would push hard to, you know, it's Oregon law. We could have a mixed use area with mixed ages. So, you know, we don't need to have an only over 21 area. That is something that we kind of talked about briefly, but we decided to go with just over 21, but it doesn't have to be that way. I've been in many events in Oregon where it's a mixed area, where wristbands, but you have mixed ages. I think we would, well, the Elks are great. I don't know if we need them, to be honest. You know, we gave a lot of the revenue directly to the Elks, and they're you know, they're part of the community to a certain extent in St. Helens, but you know, we could relook at that, because that was a lot of revenue that could go toward other causes there. It is possible to get a 2-day liquor license for an event. I actually reached out to LLCC about all this stuff. I sent that to Isaac months ago. So maybe that's something we could look at. As far as marketing, you know, I'm with Jeanette. We had a lot of factors going against us with weather and such, but the Facebook ad spending seemed to be, we really plowed through that really quickly. Brandon, especially, I mean, we really went through it very, very fast. For myself as a company, we spend a lot of money in Facebook advertising, and we do a lot of testing beforehand. We only spend, you know, very little amount for weeks till we determine what's going to work, and then spend. Maybe for something like this, knowing our demographic, maybe that's not where we spend money next time. You know, maybe we look at more traditional means because of the communities that we're trying to reach. I don't know. We can have a subcommittee on this later, but that's kind of one of the marketing feedbacks I have. But overall, I think we should be really proud. As we said, I think from the outside, everyone had a great time, and no one knew how much we were running around, and especially the volunteers. It was unbelievable, the amount of support we got. So thanks to everybody.
I think besides what's been said, if obviously the city's probably going to do an annual event going forward, because that's the history, I guess, before I got here of the way things were. And if you go back to 2019, Sauerkraut Festival was very limited in scope, but it turned a profit. So I think the key is to limiting the scope. And there's some things that the city could do that would help that. And one would be to make Veterans Park more amenable to having events, because water and power over there are not really conducive to doing this kind of event. So as you go into the budget process next year, city councilors, maybe you could look at that as a capital improvements project. Also, I think another thing that would help would be for the city councilors to look at the 6-foot fence rule for the beer garden. That's a local ordinance, and that's a huge cost for event, and I don't know what it accomplishes. I mean, yeah, you can have a fence, but 6 feet, we have to rent it. And I would consider either doing just a one-day event. One-day event, the advantage is you don't have to have the nighttime security. People set up in the morning very early, and then they tear down at night. Or if we do it 2 days, we should do it just the whole weekend, just, you know, Saturday, Sunday. I don't even remember why we decided to do Friday, Saturday.
I vote for the one day.
Hey, anything else? Okay. You know, honestly, I think everything that we did with this and planning this was good. And the thing to kill this was the weather. I mean, 107 degrees on Thursday. My God, that doesn't happen in Oregon. And I remember Janet put on the Summer Fest about 10 years ago. Year before, they had a great crowd. Then they had heat like we had. And it just keeps people away. I mean, I had a lot of people say, you know, I came, but it was so, and my uncle was in the band. I wanted to listen to it, but it was really uncomfortably hot. So you had that, and COVID on top of that spike in it. I think, you know, despite that, I think it turned out to be a pretty extraordinary event. I heard a lot of really positive feedback about run, the parade, the history booth was extraordinary. You put an amazing amount of time into that, and it really paid off. And I think next year, if there's going to be another event, probably should move it into June, late June. I'm not sure we want to wait till August. I'm a little bit afraid of that kind of heat. Maybe that knows if that would help, but historically the powwow was like the third week of June, and usually you had a lot more pleasant weather, and I think that had a lot to do with, you know, Mr. Treadway talked about the week after. Well, the weather was a whole lot. If we would have had our event a week after, we would have had probably 5 times the crowd, I think, honestly.
For the week before.
Yeah, we just didn't hit the right week, and so despite that, it really turned out to be an extraordinary event. Hopefully we could do a Scappoose 101. I think one full day, if anything, on a Friday, it would just maybe have music on a Friday night, maybe, and then be a couple of food booths, and then everybody else moves in Saturday and your events on a Saturday, and call it good at that. But you know, one park only, it's just too hard to manage, especially with the number of volunteers we had, and that's a big challenge that Scappoose faces. Is it doesn't have any group. I mean, that's what happened. That's why we don't have powwow or other events. It's hard to find good volunteers, and we were fortunate that we had this group. You guys all did an amazing job of. We met every week for what, 9 months, and felt really, really good. And but yeah, I think downscale a little bit and don't try to be all things to all groups. You know, come up with a plan, stay with it. Don't keep adding events. I think, you know, a run and a parade and some booths and some entertainment. Simple. It's doable. Anyway,
It seems to me that we're going to need to, or somehow we keep talking about next year, but we don't have anybody that's going to, at this point, better head it up and get the ball rolling, so to speak. Is that something this group needs to do in a transition to identify some group to do what we did for next year?
so I'd help next year. I don't know if anybody else is willing to step up. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I hope that the same, all of you that had participated would continue.
So Mike, to Pete's point, and back to, you know, Treadway's, the front loading, the coordination, I think that if we decide we're going to do another event, you know, where the city's going to do that, we need to do that soon. Yeah. And then if Treadway is willing to come back, you know, and we can finance that.
I think we put together a committee, thinking about the community club. You know, if we had an organization like that, that would make it a lot simpler for the city to do it. But they're kind of limited resource wise, limited member wise. I don't know, Janet, what do you think?
About next, sorry, I was missing a lot of what you said, but
Just to answer your question, I think when we were talking about when the sauerkraut festival was happening, and because it was a city, but you didn't want to associate it with the city. So that's when we brought in the Scappoose Community Club, the back end, the people that would make the checks out to. The understanding back then was that the community club was going to start and taking over the annual event. Not sure that's what they were supposed to be doing. A few of us in the committee joined the community club, paid for the membership,
Right.
never heard anything.
what's happening with the community club is there's just so few members, and it's all this, it's typical, the same people doing every event.
Yeah.
There's a handful of people, and they're tired, and I think that they want to fold the community club or somehow combine it with either historical society or the boosters. And I think the boosters are sitting in the same position. There was 8 people. And we're kind of waiting for that kind of younger generation that are really involved in all the other parent groups. Their kids are now just getting in high school, and we're kind of hoping that they're going to take the ball and run with it with the boosters. But the community club, I think, is not going to be around for very much longer. But your thought about having it earlier, I think, is a really good idea. And the reason being, people are anxious for something, and sometimes if we've already had Rainier Days and the fair and all those other things, if you can kind of be the first event, I think you get a better turnout. It used to be June, the weather was so iffy, and I think now we have a better chance of having better weather.
Yeah.
I think a June event wouldn't be a bad idea.
So Jeff and Janet, you're both part of the community club, right?
Say that again?
You're part of the community
Yes,
club?
yeah.
And what is there, 4 or 5 members?
Yeah.
6?
No, there's a few more than that. Maybe 8 to 10.
Okay. Because I don't see the city wanting to sponsor I mean, I could see the city being a major contributor to an organization, but I don't know if you guys are going to want to put this on every year. I think you want to be.
I think it has to be the community steps up with the city's support, but I think it'd be real hard for the city to put on an event like this. It isn't a good fit, in my opinion. But they do need the city's support to pull it off. And I know the one thing that Susie said that was very helpful is having being able to use Jill in the accounting situation, because she pulling out her hair a couple of years before with the Sauerkraut Festival and collecting money and all that kind of thing. So, I mean, the city would still be involved and supportive of it, but unless I'm missing something, it seems like this should be a community event run basically by one of our community organizations. The problem is we don't really have very many community organizations anymore. It's not like when we had active service clubs, and we don't have that anymore. So we had the JCs and the Kiwanis. They were both used to be very, very active. The Kiwanis are still going, but they're not as active as they used to be. So I guess we need to maybe talk to a group, see who would be willing to head this up. And probably right now with Janet's leadership, the most active group we've got in Scappoose, as far as volunteers is concerned, at least in my opinion, is the Scappoose Historical Society. That's they're really kind of moving forward. I don't know if that's an appropriate group to look to, because it is a heck of a lot of work. They might not want to take that on, but if they combine with the community club.
I think the city should support whatever organization decides to do that, take that on. I know that part of the, I'm in the Economic Development Committee. It was put on us when I started to do the Sauerkraut Festival as a community event. Mm-hmm. So I think defining how the city is going to support that. Is it through a subcommittee or, members, or is it only funding or supporting funding and providing support as in help? Whatever organization decides to take that on, I think the city needs to define that.
So Paul, Robbie?
Yeah.
What you're thinking on this?
I have a question to Brandon. Brandon, so what other tasks could you take on, especially if you started early, that could take the place of Isaac and Jill to a certain extent? If we said you were going to basically be our main point of contact in this, and maybe it was a smaller group of people and we leaned on Treadway more.
Yeah, so on that note, generally what Treadway is doing, we're essentially doing the entire event, and then we're reporting to the committee. Just to put it bluntly, that's what we've done. That's what we did for the Rotary Club of Longview on that other event that Isaac was mentioning. So a lot of the communications, front loading, like Joel said, all of the invoicing and the proposals and getting all of that stuff and really concepting the event from the start so that we have a solid understanding. this is what the event is before we even start spending money. Because what I noticed personally is this event it snowballed into something much, much larger from the time that I started to the final product as well. And I think everyone else is aware of that too. So really getting that portion taken care of from the start will save us money as well. But in general, treadway events, we would be able to take on, we can take on as much as we absolutely need. Initially, we were kind of from the way that we were contracted, it was more of a overseeing, what it's already been done for the most part and just kind of keeping it on track and things of that nature versus more of the hands-on. It turned into more hands-on, and that's perfectly fine, of course. But really starting out from that point and, all the event setup, for example, Charles and I, and we had some other people out there, that's not something that the committee needs to be doing per se, right? As long as we have the budget in place for additional event support staff, that's, no one needs to be out there lugging power cable like Isaac was doing, and filling up water stations and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of that is what we can really take care of as well.
Oh, Brandon, I'm sorry, just one more with that, but like as far as vendors, for instance, is that something that you could take on, which is like finding vendors, or would it be back on the community to find the vendors?
Are you talking about like marketplace vendors or service providers?
Oh no, I'm talking about marketplace.
Yeah, yeah.
So food vendors and selling T-shirts, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Are you taking all that on as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly what we've done in the past, and that's generally what we always do offer. For most of the, when we've worked with committees this is probably the largest committee, to be quite honest. Most of them are right around 4 to 5 people. We're generally the main vendor point of contact because that's one of the most time-consuming pieces. Also, I know it was tough finding some of these vendors, especially with the timeline as well. But yes, that is something that we can take care of as well.
I think that would eliminate the too many cooks in the kitchen situation. So.
Well, I think the wild card is you have to have an organization that has the financial resources to pay them.
Right. Right.
Oh, Brandon, if the decision is made to do it again next year, from my experience with Summerfest, we started a year ahead looking for, especially the second year we did it, because we realized that a lot of companies, they cut off their contributions sometimes the end of September for the next year, or the end or December 31st. Yeah. So if it's something that we're going to do, then we probably should start it within a couple of months.
Yeah,
you're thinking
in terms of sponsorship, without a doubt, absolutely.
And so, how would you be paid? I mean, in this case, the city paid your fee. Would your fee be the revenues generated from the event, or
so the way that works, it's generally based on the total event budget or total amount spent in whichever case. In this year we did basically a flat rate based on what the projection was, and ended up going drastically over that, of course, but we were at that percentage fee. And then we have a minimum. So we never price ourselves off of the amount, sponsorship revenue or total event revenue. It's always the budget, because the budget's what tells us exactly how much work it's going to be. If it's $100,000 budget, that means that it's going to be that much more work versus a $20,000 budget, for example. So generally it'd be a flat rate still. And then on top of that, we would just charge hourly rates for event support staff. But the planning itself is always going to be either that flat or about 15 to 18% of the total event budget.
I've got a question about the Longview event. Is that an annual event that they do?
It is, yeah. Yeah, annual.
What's the primary source of their, if they made $40,000, what was that primarily from?
So event sponsorships, vendor fees, and then beer garden sales.
And did you work on the sponsorships, or did they have their committee work on the sponsorships?
Majority was the committee. We brought in a few, but just to be clear, they had about 2 months to bring in what they did bring in for sponsorship. So it is, Longview's a bigger city too. That it's not super comparable when it comes to that. There's a lot. It's another ball game, of course, but yeah, the majority of the sponsorship was brought in by the committee itself.
So Brandon, to turn it the other way, what would you look for from us that you couldn't do? So sponsorships, and what else?
Sponsorship is the main thing, because that's the most time consuming, to be quite honest. If we were hired just to do sponsorship, that's one thing. But if we're managing the entire event, we really would rely on the committee. That and any other like local marketing partnerships, things of that nature. That's really it, to be honest.
We're on vacation.
Charles is probably like, oh no, I don't want to, but to be honest, that is kind of what that's kind of an all-in-one.
Are we seeking out a proposal from Treadway to propose to the city for the next year event?
And before we get to that point, I would love to, either sit down with whoever is interested in moving forward and really just figuring out an event concept and nailing that down first, and then moving from there. That would be the ideal situation, I think, because we really can hammer out those details.
I make a motion that we do that. We get a subgroup here and we meet with Brandon and Charles or whomever, and then see where we want to go with it.
We have a group of 2.
First of all, I think before we meet with Brandon, we have to figure out, okay, what do we want this thing to be? Is it about Scappoose in general? Is it the 101, whatever, da da da? What kind of scope do we want it to be? We have to create a brief for him, and then go back to him and say, okay, here's what we were thinking. Here's kind of stuff we're kind of whatever, and work together on it. But I think first we have to determine, hey, is this the Summerfest or whatever we're going to call it? What's going to be just the thoughts of it? Whatever. We need to work that out first before we work it out with. Then go to him. I believe.
And to that point, Paul, your notion of the magnet that participant events come, draw, that becomes kind of a no-brainer. And given the success of the run, this could be the Scappoose run, a run for Scappoose festival, and then you've got that participant event that's the anchor for everything, and that might be a good place to start. Then have that conversation with Brandon and go from there.
Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, I think allowing like an event company to have more executive authority would make it a lot easier for us or any other organization that wants to take it on. But yeah, we would need to come up with like a concept first, or narrow the scope down, and then maybe also shop it around to see if a different organization wants to take it on. I came in kind of late, but I could tell there was kind of a lot of red tape, and when you're working with like through the government or city government, and so it might be better for an outside organization to do it rather than the city. But narrowing it down, kind of coming up with a concept and a scope, and then allowing an event organization to take more of a role, I think that would be successful and profitable. But I do think we should, Scappoose deserves, or I think an annual event would be very nice in this community. I support that.
Janet, any feedback? What you thinking? Janet? You think it's a good idea? What do you?
He's looking at you.
Oh, yeah, you're looking at me. What'd you
He's
say?
looking at you.
Looking at you.
Can't hear you.
Yeah,
You're a
sorry.
mumbler.
Yeah, you're a mumbler, and then I can't see you. She said it first.
She's right. She knows me pretty well.
I like that idea too. I think that we need to sit down and, what do we really want for next year? Or do we want a 1-day event? Do you want a 3-day event? Because all that's going to make a big difference to Brandon.
I've got to
We need
run.
Narrow that down.
And I think another important question is there another, does the community club want to take this on, or the boosters?
Well, Josette's president of the community club, and I would say right now she'd probably freak out if I brought that up to her, because I think, she's not interested in that. And then with the historical society, I think it makes sense that maybe we would be the ones to do that. But honestly, the age group of the historical society, I would probably say that Renee and I, who also did Summerfest, probably the youngest. So it's getting participation from those people. I don't think we would, unless we all of a sudden get a whole bunch of new younger members. But I don't know that they'd be interested in that. The Boosters Summerfest page, I get likes, especially during this celebration prior to and even up to today, I've got more hits on that, more likes, more people looking at it, because I think somehow in their mind, they associated that Summerfest with this event. And so, I wish that the boosters would consider it. The problem with is the 2 years that we ran into the same problem. That one year we had that really extreme heat. And the year before we had rain, and it was in June. So
Boy,
they just were not up for breaking even again, or, losing money to put on a big event like that with the same, it was, a similar group of people where we just plain wore ourselves out doing it. And so they were kind of shying away from doing it again, but,
and so really what that means is that the problem in Scappoose, we don't have we have a community club that's just barely surviving, and really no other organization that has the people capacity. So that means that the city would be on the hook and would have to go through the same process. And so really probably what we need to do is have Pete and Joel and Alex have a conversation with the city and determine if you want to do another event. And if so, I honestly don't know who else is going to step up. You might speak with the boosters and community club and see if there's any interest. And maybe we come back in about 2 or 3 weeks and have a follow-up meeting and see if we want to do it, talk about what we would want it to be, and do we have the people and financial wherewithal to do it. And then I think after that meeting, we determine where we go.
and for the boosters, our event was, I want to say, around $50,000 each year.
And did you have seed money for that? Or did you just have to scrounge up money from sponsors? I don't think there's an organization that has any seed money.
No.
Started out.
The Historical Society doesn't, I think.
I think it's an art. I mean, what I'm hearing more and more is let's keep it simple. If we're going to do something, it needs to be a one-day event and make it manageable so that, because this was pretty overwhelming. 2 parks, 9 different events going on. And
starting it a year early, starting it now. I mean, I hate to say
We've
now.
only got 10
A
months.
month from now.
So you want to come back in a couple of weeks, and what do you think, Paul?
I've already been contacted by the Niels family. They want to do a run again. I'm up for doing that again if Robbie's around. Help me out. It is a nice anchor for something. I think we're going to do something regardless because I think the run's got legs, so to speak. I think it could be twice as big next year. I want to lean on Treadway hard. I think that basically want them to do almost everything for us. So it's just an oversight committee, real simple. The committee is going to basically try to get the sponsorship stuff, and beyond that, just get out of Treadway's way, to be honest. And as long as we can get the city's backing, because I think, like you said, there's no other organization that's going to have the money. That's a great. I think ultimately we all ran out of gas because we were just doing so much. But if Treadway, they're the professionals here. So if we could lean on them to get this done, I think it's a no-brainer as long as we can get the backing from the city.
I think that if, just as you were talking, I imagined having the event, having the run, and then after the run, you know how there's runs and everybody comes to celebrate, like the Hood to Coast, and they have a concert, and they have food, and they have vendors. I said, it can be as simple as that, right? Having a run and getting, after the run, everybody gets together, there's music, food and drinks, and why can't it be just that?
I think we need more than that. I mean, I think we need a parade. Everybody loved the parade. Yeah. Small, I still consider this a small town. Maybe we're not, but people just love that. Just the nostalgia of it. And I think that, like, if we have, one, just like Gail did, just work on the parade all year long, maybe, make that bigger and better. And just
and it's free. It doesn't cost any money to have a parade.
Okay, so just looking at that though, if it's the run and it's the parade, and then it's a day of food vendors, vendors selling things, and bands and stuff.
We're good.
That sounds like a great day. I mean,
like on Saturday, I'm going to a triathlon in Sweet Home, small community, and it's a triathlon like festival. So they got a traditional swim, bike, run, but they also have a paddle, bike, run. They have a duathlon. They have a single run. They have bands and foods at the end. So having some type of like kind of festival, maybe with a run at the beginning of the day and then a parade in the middle or something like that, and then having a little festival at the end. It could be a one-day event like that.
That's doable. Yeah. And we could even have cornhole.
No, now you're starting
I
to.
think
complicate
sometimes the
things.
reason they do 2-day events, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
everything that you're renting, sometimes, it costs you the same amount to do it for 1 day as it does for 2. So,
That is true. Yes,
Well-
that is the case most of the time. But
And what would you recommend on that? Would that be did it work well with a Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday? How did that go? What's your...
so yeah, that was on our list. So what I would have done if we had started this from the very beginning, I would have done a kickoff concert on Friday night. I wouldn't have done anything during the day simply because the town isn't large enough to bring in that many people during the workday. A kickoff concert Friday night, Saturday, and then Sunday. But Sunday, not going late into the evening at all. More of probably 4 or 5, and then hard stop right about there. That's kind of what I would have probably suggested for the scale of the event in general.
I kind of like Friday night and Saturday and call it good.
Yeah, moving forward, yes, a Friday night kickoff and then all day Saturday with Saturday night performer, bands and stuff too. Not on Sunday moving forward.
Okay. We got this resolved, don't we?
I was disappointed on the Friday night turnout for Hit Machine.
Yeah.
No, he usually draws a really big crowd, and I don't know if it was advertised well enough. Yeah, I think
It was.
but it's so hot. A lot of people still want to come out and drink beer and listen to music. It's cooled down in the evening, and I was just like, whoa, there's not hardly anybody here. I don't know why that happened, but I've also wondered many times if we brought in a bigger name band. I know it would cost more, but if you just did a Friday night and you brought in a bigger name and you had a cover charge that was larger to cover that cost. I mean, is that something, Brandon, you've seen done? Or
It makes perfect sense because these, Hit Machine is the same band that everyone, personally, myself and, Charles, around all of these events, they're the same one everyone uses, to be honest. And they're great. Don't get me wrong. I love them myself. But everyone's seen them already. So when you do bring in those bigger ones, the return is more worthwhile. That's for sure.
That's kind of what I think. That's something we should look at.
So come back in 2 weeks and make some decisions.
Really briefly, from the city's perspective for the next event, a lot of that red tape is because we did this via committee. But when you have a committee, you have to do public meetings, minutes, recordings. You got to manage it. I think it'd be more successful if we can do it through a different type of mechanism than a committee. I think that would be easier for the city to be involved with.
So what would that look like?
Either an outside organization taking it on with the support of the city. The city, there's a potential. I don't know how other cities do it, and I can't speak for the city. I'm not employed. I'm just a contractor. But the city hypothetically could hire Treadway, and then Treadway could stand up a group of people to advise them, or the city could help stand up a unofficial group that's not a committee to take on some of those community roles. We can avoid the committee mechanism and still have the same effect where everybody can gather here. We can all talk about it, but it doesn't have to have all of this extra administrative work. Because I spent 6 months solid on this. I didn't do anything else, which is probably one of the largest parts for the city. It was hard to account for. So just a note going forward.
Well, I think we probably need to decide I think we can decide now. I like what I hear Paul saying. Let's lean on Treadway. They're the experts on this. And if we could make a recommendation at this meeting that we would like to get the ball rolling for next year as soon as possible, based upon what I heard, Friday night and then all day Saturday kind of thing. And then maybe another entertainment Saturday evening, but not do it all day Friday like we did. So maybe with that in mind, we don't have a theme yet but we can develop one. It should have something to do with Scappoose, so we put ourselves on the map, so to speak. But one of the things we've got going for ourselves here is we have tremendous parks and recreational opportunities. I don't know how you tie that into a theme for this event, but it could be something that we can hang our hat on, so to speak. And so that might be, but that could be Redway and whoever works with them responsibility to figure all that out. But to me, we're at the point now we can recommend to the city that we, bring Treadway on as soon as possible and move forward with their leadership.
What I'm also hearing is that we need to have an organization take this on. Let's just say it's the community club, right? We can talk to them and say, obviously they already have their events that they do during the year, and say you can just be the organization for this event, like they committed before, and say if you say yes, and Josette can come, and then some of us who decides to, what I had to do is become a member. It's $10 to be a member of the community club. Y'all participate. We want to be part of this event and plan it with the community club, then just pay the $10 to be a member, and then be part of that, because it seems
I can
like
bring it to the boosters and the historical society
right.
and ask both. Would you be interested in
All
that?
come together, right?
Yeah.
But I think what what I'm hearing from Isaac is that he wants it away from the city.
Sure.
And so they can support us maybe on the financial part, right? With through the economic development. I know there's a budget to support community events, so something like that, right? Versus time of staff.
So I'm a little confused in the sense that Pete's saying that we should have the city hire Treadway to organize it. But I haven't heard, so that makes me think the city's going to kind of have maybe a group that works. I'm not sure what it looks like, but it sounds like the city would hire Treadway and Treadway would maybe have some community volunteers. And I'm hearing you talk about different committees. So I'm not real clear on.
From what I recall last time is that when we were doing well, I know this event was because it was the 100-year celebration, so I know the city didn't mind being as involved, right, as it was. But an event, a community event in the future, I'm not sure. This is what I remember the city saying when the sauerkraut is that we don't want to be the organization to be having to do the event. It has to be a separate entity or separate. Or they wanted to separate it from the city.
It just makes it easier and it cuts the red.
Makes sense, but I'm not sure who that would be.
What I was suggesting is that if it does end up somehow becoming the city council action, or Alex says, yeah, we'll do it, right? All of the administrative burden we're already talking about being put on Treadway, right? We would not be hiring them for the partial event. They'd be hired to do not just manage it, but produce it all from start to finish. All of the work that I did would not be being done by the city. And so it makes it more feasible. I'm not suggesting that should be the course forward or the city endorses that or anything. I'm just saying from my perspective as an intern.
But if that was,
red tape.
It would be great if the city
Right.
would agree to it.
but if that was the case, then you wouldn't need a committee, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it seems to me that we'd be missing something. If we didn't have a community committee involved with this. And my thought is that it's not going to be nearly as much work as it has been in the past. I mean, everybody's gun shy, after Sauerkraut Festival and that you were involved with and others and powwows, and it's huge volunteer investment.
Right.
We don't have those standing committees any longer to do that. And so if we hire Treadway to do this, they're going to pick up the ball and run with it. And basically, the committee is basically there to advise them and to get sponsorships, as I understand what Brandon has said. And that's something that's doable. If we only had to concentrate on getting sponsors, that was just a little part of what we did. But if we could concentrate on that and have a real good package we presented to them and gave that a lot of thought, I think we could do well. We won't do what we did for the 100-year celebration because for one thing. We just got done talking to them. We just gave them thank you notes and plaques, and now we're going to go back to them and ask them for more money. Maybe we better wait a month or two. But anyway, I just think that this committee's not going to be overburdened like we were this year, or what you were with Summerfest and Sauerkraut Festival.
Yep.
Brenda's going to be carrying that ball.
I kind of think about like an analogy that when I think about what Treadway does and what we would have to do moving forward is it's kind of like when I do a room for an estate sale and I set the big items first and then I merchandise all the smalls. It's kind of a similar, I feel like they're going to do the setting, but all those little details where we need the committee will be who's ever taking over the parade. We'll work on that for a year. Who's ever looking into what music venue, what music that we're going to have. No, that's not their job, right? That would be their
Yeah,
job.
it is.
It would be.
It is.
That's what.
That's the
It's
setup we
theirs.
have right now.
Yeah.
That the setup, I mean, they're proposing something different where the committee becomes an advisory body. So
Right.
they would say, okay, here's the big scope, here's the kind of general idea. We want this kind of an event, history focused, community focused, Squirrel Fest focused on bridges or whatever. We'd like to have a beer garden. We'd like to have some music. We'd like to have vendors.
We
Give it
suggest,
Treadway and they
That's
stick
it.
something out on the other side and say, hey, okay, this is our plan. This is what we're like. Do you like that? Yes, no. So it's more of kind of what city council does, where they set the big picture forward and some other group executes.
So Gail, do you have a comment?
Actually do. So there's 2 or 3 established organizations. I don't know if Kiwanis is still a thing. Maybe there's 4 in our community. Could we pick whatever one would be willing to have us be their umbrella? They could be the umbrella organization because they're already established. We would be a subcommittee of, say, the Kiwanis or the Boosters or the community club, where they're really not, the small group of the community club's not so involved, but we're a subcommittee of that organization. And we have the umbrella of an established group, not the city,
See what you're saying,
coordinating
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I mean,
There are
City
other
doesn't want to do
organizations
that.
Well, because the Kiwanis, even though they're not real active right now, they do have an umbrella organization. So
Right.
They have access to insurance, which they still run the basketball program and some of
Right.
the other, the soccer program. So and mostly what they do is provide insurance for them.
well, they may be willing to do it. I mean, it could bring in new members. It could revitalize those community clubs.
Well,
I'd be happy to talk to the Kiwanis if that's what the group wanted me to do.
well, then you have the community club, which is this is exactly the kind of
Yeah, it's their
thing
right.
that
Yeah.
I mean, they're the natural one, and
Yeah.
truth is if all of us joined, we'd have a majority on the community club, and we could use that shell as the organization to kind of advise Treadway on how to do this. I mean, that's honestly the simplest way
I agree.
we can make that happen. We all just fill out an application and maybe get some of our friends to fill out an application. All of a sudden, we have 15 members. Because the truth is, we're going to need volunteers to do this anyway. You hear me okay, Janet?
and another option can be all these organizations have to come at this meeting and represent, like I'm here for, represent economic development, Kiwanis, the community club. And I think in numbers of organizations that all the organizations are part of an event, a Scappoose event, I think that would be ideal.
I think that's great, but I think what we just heard is less is more. I mean, we got to get out of these guys' way. We don't need to be having 7 different guys telling us, well, geez, this is the logo, whatever, da 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 da. We want these guys just to run the damn thing and have 1 or 2 people that they could talk to and say, hey, is this cool? Does this reflect your city? Yes, great.
Those 1 or 2 people would represent the advisory board for the event.
Yeah, right. But I mean, we shouldn't
Right?
have
I
too many
mean-
layers because it's just going to be basically what Isaac said. It's just, well,
That's what I'm saying. Instead, that would be key people of each organization, so
yeah, but even
everybody would
that,
feel that they're
yeah.
represented. That's my key.
I just don't want to then that 2 people are then has another meeting with the 7 others. Okay, here's what happened. Da 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 da. Layer. I mean, it's going to be a day and a half event. I mean,
Well, it also, I mean, we're going back to scope, right? This is going to be far smaller. There'll be a
Yeah.
lot less moving parts
Mhm.
most likely, which means
Right.
the overhead administrative stuff is a lot less. I mean, this event was, we spent $90,000 on this. 90,000. We cut it in half. That's 50. I mean, that's half the amount of tasks, half the amount of planning. It requires far fewer bodies and far fewer people.
Well, yes and no, because you've got certain sunk costs in using veterans that are going to be the same no matter what. We'll have to hire staging, sound.
We wouldn't. They would.
Well, yeah, but I mean, still.
Yeah, it's gonna be some that are the same, but we probably won't have a $25,000 stage setup again. I mean,
So Jeff, what do you think we should do?
It would be nice if there was a community organization that can do it, but I don't see that there is.
We-
And the other problem with using a community organization is you're saddling them with the potential losses they can't afford. But on the other hand, if we have it in June, we're already in the city's fiscal year. And the money was spent on this event, as I understand it, for
That's a good thing.
community events. So there's no money June.
It's a good argument to do it maybe the second week of July.
For 2023?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe we have money in the budget to do this for next year. I mean, some money to offset whatever the costs are, seed money or whatever. I never could find out how much there was, but I was told that there was some money in the budget for getting another annual event going for 22.
And if we start now with those big sponsorships, like there's a lot of bigger places I think we miss, like, Comcast and, big companies that service Big County. I think we can get some better sponsorships.
We missed a lot of them too. I thought of a number of them after we did it that I'm sure they would have, if we have asked them, they would have contributed. So there's still pretty deep pockets there.
I'm going to try to summarize where I think we are here, if that's possible. I think what I'm hearing is that kind of the group thinks that it should be a Friday night event, maybe some entertainment, and then a full day Saturday event with miscellaneous different events. And that maybe what we need to do is have that scope presented to Treadway, have them give us an idea what we're looking at as far as costs for the event. And then the city can take a look at that, see if that's something they want to include in their budget or not, because we don't have any other community groups that have the financial resource to do that. And then maybe we meet in 2 or 3 weeks and get feedback from the city, get feedback from Treadway about what kind of costs, and then try and set a date. And then we could have a advisory committee that would work with Treadway to help get sponsors and help with miscellaneous elements of the event. Like have Paul help with the run. Gail, you'd probably, I know you'd kill you if you couldn't be involved with the parade. No, I'm just kidding. But is that kind of where we're at?
What I'm gathering, yeah.
Yeah, Brandon, if you could do if you could do that and also come back to also with that, say, and here's what we're looking from you guys with respect to the amount of sponsorships. So a day and a half event, here's the budgeting, approximate, just, real high level stuff. And then there's a council meeting this week, but then the next one is what, a month away, right? So we would need that back, probably a week before that council meeting, that Pete then could bring that to council. Does that sound right to you, Pete? So that's like in mid-October, the council meeting.
Well, it'd be the
There's one canceled, I think, so
18th or something like that,
The second and fourth Mondays, right?
October 18th.
somewhere around there.
For first and third?
Yeah, so basically, if we could be prepared for that meeting, that would be key.
And so we can have a follow-up meeting with Treadway and with this committee and say, okay, this is what it looks like and this is what it costs are, and embrace it or not, right? So we'll do that in about 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks, maybe a week before the council meeting. And I think that the other thing is we'll pick the date based on the city's budget. I mean, if you already spent the money for this year, then it means we have to wait till after July 1, which is not a big deal.
Well, we also, Brandon, we could use your expertise with saying, hey, these weekends look open in this area. Like we don't want to be competing with another event. So maybe
Yeah.
you could have a couple things that you say, hey, these 2 or 3 dates are, I think would be your most chance of success.
Sure thing. Yeah, no problem. June off the bat is definitely a rough month. That's when everyone, Rose Festival and everything else is going on in June. So I would definitely shoot towards mid-July or earlier August, that first week maybe or something. But
What do you think about, we did sauerkraut in the first week of September, and that worked really well. There were a ton of people here. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that school's back in session, so you've got a planted audience. People aren't running around on vacation.
yeah,
That's a good thought.
Feedback, I think one of the concerns was that it got darker
It
earlier.
does get darker.
That was the one issue. Janet, do you have a recommendation for a date?
Ugh,
Ideal?
I like the idea of doing it, beating other people to their festivals. And sometimes if it's right after the fair, a lot of people don't show up. I don't know. August, you just have a better chance of having good weather and not iffy weather, I feel like. But late June would be nice.
Let's put that on the agenda for the next meeting on dates.
So,
With Brandon's.
Brandon, can you
feedback.
give us conflict dates that you're
Yeah.
aware of for the next
Yeah.
meeting?
And make
Yeah.
sure you try to find out when the Columbia County Fair is, because that's one that's,
It's usually the third weekend, isn't it? Almost always the third
Well,
weekend.
I think Rose Festival is going to be a huge competition too, because it'll explode next year. Haven't done it for 2 years.
yeah, right. Well, very good. Anything else?
Can we set that meeting time now so we don't have to,
so the committee technically doesn't exist after tonight.
yeah, okay.
Right.
So
It's a new committee then.
this is a group of people.
For
Kind of-
concerned citizens.
That community group you were talking about?
Brit? Were
So-
you it? The community
Yeah,
group?
that's
Kind
kind of
of.
what I wanted to define,
Who's
like,
101?
are we all
Organizing
gonna be in this next year? I mean, are we all saying we're gonna be part of this next year's celebration?
You can meet at the Historical Society house too.
You can still meet here, I think.
Well, I think that remains to be seen.
Yeah, why don't we define the scope and we'll decide, right?
Right?
I got to find out how many power lines we got to put up and that kind of stuff. Make sure I got time to.
The panels.
What's that?
Let's call it.
What's that?
I
You-
Don't know.
Are we picking a date to meet?
Did we pick a date to meet?
Yeah, we're picking a date right now. Pete,
Oh.
what, Isaac, you got a date?
What about the
2 weeks from
Thursday before?
which,
I don't have my calendar. I guess.
30th?
isn't there a big calendar right there? The other side of the,
30th is
I can't make that.
The 20th is the council meeting.
20th,
October.
And then October 4th is the next council meeting.
No, that's
Canceled.
canceled.
Canceled, okay.
We have,
That's the
that's what I'm
canceled one.
saying, that's the canceled one. So we can do it in October. Right,
Well,
first week
So
October.
right after October 4th?
so October, what day would it be? First Monday in
7th?
7th of October?
Thursday, yeah.
That's the date, 7th of October?
It was October.
just an FYI, Charles nor myself will be available on that date, but we can of course have everything together as well.
Should we,
That'd be great. No, actually, I
can
think,
It's
move
just
it.
us, right?
no, I
just
think,
us the first
we
time.
I think it
It's
might
just
be
us.
good just to have his info and for us just to,
Well, as long as we
Got
have.
it,
the
I
agree.
budget, 'cause if we
yeah, as long as he has
don't
his
get
budget, he'll have the budget.
yeah, get us the information and that'd be perfect.
Okay.
So October 7th, is that what you said?
Great.
October 7th.
Concerned citizens.
Do you want to meet at what's house? Here.
Oh, we meet here.
Okay.
Can we meet
Make sure
here?
it's open though, right?
No, that's what I was gonna say. Can we meet here?
Well,
Probably. I will ask tomorrow. I mean, we don't use the room, so I'm sure that's fine.
So that can be a backup if,
okay, anything, wigwam, we could do it at my
Anywhere.
house.
I know. That has a kitchen.
We could probably meet at the senior center too if we needed it. And Janet offered the Historical Society.
All I can say is I got a shuffleboard at my house, so
We meet at Mike's house.
Brother.
do. Okay, well, everyone, again, thank you for all your hard effort And we're going to meet at 5:30
So much fun of it.
So easy.
right here. We hope.
What time?
Mike, I've got one more thing.
5:30.
Okay,
That-
thank you.
That is just real simple. I want to say thank you to Mike for his leadership throughout this whole thing. He's been consistent and, it kept, things got a little bit, he just had a way of keeping us moving forward in a positive way. So, Mike, thanks a lot for your leadership. You've done a great job for us.
Yeah, good job. I want to say thanks to Isaac. 'Cause He,
Oh, yeah, but
he
I
put in
think too, I shouldn't have.
up till 1 a.m.
Every one of you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You were awesome.
Amazing group. I mean,
we did do a pretty good job. We were good too.
I have been on a better committee.
He says that to
Robert, you did the triathlon?
Okay, we're breaking.
Moving here.
I think we're under event. I'm serious.
Have you been training?
It's
for
under
it?
event. I think we're under
I
event.
think we are, yeah.
Feeling a breeze.
You do triathlons?
When he was-
Do you do triathlons?
I know.
Now
He's a mumbler anyway.
it's not.
So mad at him.
It was like the movie, and it looked like a
Yeah,
movie.
Bruce, we had a biathlon.
Track record.
2 years, actually.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, we did. It goes way back, 30 years ago.
My dad-
Ted White organized it,
There, and
White's
it's
Home
like-
Furnishings here in
I forgot.
Scappoose, and,
Forgot.
Oh,
but we didn't do the swim.
Um,
The bike around the dike was a 10-mile loop.